There's probably a bottle of something that once got a man sentenced to death. Not for murder, not for theft, for watering down beer. 4,000 years ago, in the world's very first cities, that was the law. A bad pour was a capital crime. And that's the small stuff. Beer didn't just get people killed. Historians now believe it may have built the very first cities on Earth, before bread, before writing, before kings. Stick with me for the next few minutes, because by the end, you'll never look at a cold one the same way again. Around 4000 BCE, in the ruins of an ancient Sumerian city, an archaeologist brushed dirt off a small clay tablet and expected the usual: a tax record, a prayer, a list of grain. Instead, it was a recipe, not for bread, for beer. That tablet had been sitting in the ground for 6,000 years, and it forced historians to ask an uncomfortable question. What if beer came before almost everything we associate with civilization? Keep watching, because the answer to that question changes how you think about why humans ever stopped wandering and built the first city at all. 9,000 years ago, in the Zagros Mountains of modern-day Iran, archaeologists found something strange coating the inside of ancient clay jars, a chemical residue left behind only when barley is brewed. For context, that's 4,000 years before the pyramids of Giza existed, 6,000 years before Rome. And it happened before humans had even invented writing. People were brewing beer before they could write down the word for beer. Here's the part that flips everything on its head. Some archaeologists now argue that early humans didn't start farming grain to eat it. They started farming grain to drink it. Wild grain is hard to eat raw. It has to be ground, cooked, processed. But if you just soak it in water and forget about it for a few days, wild yeast in the air takes over. What comes out is a mildly alcoholic, slightly sour drink that doesn't spoil as fast as plain grain mush, and honestly, it probably felt pretty good to drink. That accidental discovery may be the exact reason nomadic hunter-gatherers decided to stop wandering, settle in one place, and start deliberately planting seeds. Not for bread, for beer. The Sumerians, who built the world's first true cities, didn't treat beer as a treat. They treated it as infrastructure. They even had a goddess dedicated entirely to beer, named Ninkasi, and an entire hymn written in her honor around 1800 BCE. That hymn wasn't just poetry. Scholars later realized it was actually a working beer recipe, and when they followed it exactly, the beer it produced actually worked. Workers who built the temples and canals of Sumer weren't paid in coins. There was no such thing yet. They were paid in beer, a set daily ration based on job and rank. A laborer might get around 2 liters a day. That beer wasn't a bonus. It was the paycheck. And this obsession with beer was about to get even more extreme in the country next door. In ancient Egypt, beer wasn't just wages. It was survival. And according to one of their most famous myths, it once saved the entire human race. The story goes like this. The sun god Ra grew furious at humanity for turning against him, so he sent the lioness goddess Sekhmet down to punish them. But Sekhmet didn't stop. She kept killing. She was on the verge of wiping out humanity completely. To stop her, Ra flooded the fields with 7,000 jars of beer, dyed blood red, so Sekhmet would mistake it for the blood she craved. She drank it all, thinking it was blood. She passed out, and when she woke up, her rage was gone. Humanity survived because of beer. Every year, Egyptians actually reenacted this. They held a festival where drinking beer dyed red wasn't just allowed, it was religiously required. And this wasn't a backyard operation. At one site called Hierakonpolis, archaeologists found a brewery from around 3,500 BCE, capable of producing roughly 300 gallons of beer in a single batch. That's not a home brewer. That's an early factory. But not everyone was on Team Beer. The Greeks and Romans looked down on it completely. To them, wine meant civilization, and beer meant you were an outsider. The Romans even had a word for beer-drinking people: barbaroi, barbarians. A Roman historian once described their beer as horrible and mocked them for it, which turned out to be one of the worst insults in history, because those same tribes were about to end the Roman Empire. Rome eventually fell, and wine culture retreated into a handful of monasteries. But across northern Europe, beer never stopped. It was safer than water, because boiling it during brewing killed the bacteria that made people sick. Even children drank a weak version called small beer every single day. Water could kill you. Beer kept you alive. Starting around the 600s, Christian monks began brewing beer inside their monasteries, and they had a very convenient reason. Monastic fasting rules banned solid food, but liquids were allowed. So the monks brewed strong, calorie-rich beer and drank up to 5 liters of it a day during Lent. They even had a saying for it: liquids do not break the fast. Convenient? Absolutely. But it worked, and it made monks the first truly professional brewers in Europe. One monastery in Bavaria, founded in the year 725, still brews today, with records going back almost 1,000 years without stopping. These monks also pioneered something that changed beer forever: hops. Before hops, beer spoiled within days. Hops let it survive long journeys, which meant beer could now be sold, shipped, and traded across entire regions. And once beer became something you could trade, not just drink, it was only a matter of time before someone tried to control it completely. In 1516, a German duke signed a law called the Reinheitsgebot, the beer purity law. From then on, beer could legally contain only 3 ingredients: water, barley, and hops. It was meant to protect people from unsafe beer and save wheat for bread. But it also boxed brewers into a corner and forced them to become obsessive masters of technique, because with only 3 ingredients, skill was the only thing left to compete on. For centuries, that stability held. Beer was so normal, so essential, that the Pilgrims reportedly stopped at Plymouth Rock, partly because their ship was running low on it. Then, in 1920, the United States banned alcohol completely. Prohibition hit American beer like a hammer. Before Prohibition, America had roughly 1,300 breweries. By the time it was repealed, 13 years later, almost all of them were gone. Most of the survivors only made it by secretly pivoting to ice cream, to soft drinks, to anything that wasn't beer. By 1980, fewer than 100 breweries were left in the entire country. 90% of America's beer culture had been wiped out in 60 years. And then, quietly, it came back. In 1978, a new law legalized home brewing again, and thousands of hobbyists in garages and basements started experimenting. Some of those hobbyists went on to found breweries that changed everything. Today, the United States has more than 9,000 craft breweries, more, per capita, than almost any country on Earth. The same country that once tried to erase its own beer culture is now one of the most obsessed with it in the world. And that's really the story of beer. It didn't just come along for the ride while humans built civilization. In a lot of ways, it built the ride. It got us to settle down. It paid the workers who built the pyramids. It kept monks alive through winters of fasting. It survived a law that tried to kill it completely. If you want more forgotten stories like this one, the hidden histories behind the things you eat and drink every single day, that's exactly what Food Lore exists for. Subscribe and help us keep digging up the stories no one else is telling. And in the comments, which fact in this video surprised you the most? Maybe it was the unexpected origin of an everyday ingredient, or perhaps it was the realization that something sitting in your kitchen has a history stretching back hundreds, or even thousands, of years. That's what makes food so fascinating. Every recipe, every spice, every drink, and every tradition carries a story shaped by explorers, empires, trade routes, discoveries, and ordinary people whose names have been forgotten by history. Here at Food Lore, we believe that the meals we eat every day are more than just food. They're living pieces of history.